This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
The Dallas Cowboys are 2-2 to open up the 2024 season. Welcome in to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Mike Leslie, Andrew Cely here with you once again. Andrew, it's a rather up and down start to the year for the Cowboys, but there are at least some signs of positivity coming out of that Thursday night game.
Rather be 2-2 than 1-3 for sure with the division loss. But we got a lot to get to, so let's get right into it with what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
All right, the Cowboys are back to 500 with a win over the Giants on Thursday night, but did they do enough to convince fans they can still turn the season around and turn into that 12-win team they've been over the last few years?
No.
We'll look at the injuries to Parsons and Lawrence and their impact moving forward. Plus, the A's have officially played their last game in Oakland. We'll look at the top 5 most devastating franchise relocations in North American sports history. Mike, that's what's on the show. Now, who's on the show?
We've got one return guest, our friend Saad Yousuf from The Athletic, and making his debut on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, the man we affectionately refer to as No C, Patrik Walker from the Dallas Cowboys website. Gentlemen, thank you guys for being here. Let's get right into it. What are your reactions to this 4-game start to the Cowboys season, 2-2, a win in New York that certainly looked better than what we had seen in weeks 2 and 3, but obviously also 2 rather important injuries coming out of that game as well. Patrik, I'll start with you. What is your assessment of where this team is right now?
Well, it's another year of September football for Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys. And we thought that being that this is year 2 of the McCarthy playbook offensively, I spoke with Dak at several points during the training camp, Brandon Cooks, Mike McCarthy, and CeeDee Lamb when he reported not necessarily training camp, but when he got there, asked them about the comfort level in year 2. And that was the key word. A lot of them said they're comfortable. They can play, loose now. They can play more freely. It's not heavily as far as the installs are concerned, but that's not what we've seen. We've seen slow starts from the offense, much like we did last year. Looks like the Cowboys probably won't hit their offensive stride until maybe the bye week, a little bit before, maybe a little bit after when they go against the San Francisco 49ers. But when you take the offensive slow starts and you combine them with an unusual slow start by the defense, and I get it, it's a return of Mike Zimmer, but it's his first year back. Different personnel than what Dan Quinn had. There's no Dorrance Armstrong. There's no Dante Fowler. You lose Sam Williams to the torn ACL at the start of training camp. But can't be any excuses in the NFL, especially when you have such a seasoned defensive coordinator like Mike Zimmer. But for me, it's not the scheme as much as it is the lack of execution. So they're 2-2. Now they get to kind of have a fresh start, so to speak. They're not going in at 1-4, like Andrew said. That's 1-3. That's the good news. The bad news is you could easily be 3-1 at this point, and you're not. So you are keeping pace. The Philadelphia Eagles dropped their game today against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that's good news for you. But again, you should be pulling away a little bit as the Eagles sit at 2-2. The 49ers are struggling, and now they have injuries. You're not taking advantage of it, and that's the biggest problem for me. But again, 2-2, much better than 1-3.
Saad, your thoughts?
Well, I think, a lot of the issues have been very predictable. It's stuff that we were looking at from literally March and April. I mean, the personnel at defensive tackle has not played well enough. I'm not sure that they did everything that they could have in the offseason, but Mazi Smith is coming off of his best game as a pro. That's a great sign. And the running game hasn't been up to par. And again, that is something that was very predictable to anybody that was watching the team make their moves throughout the offseason. So it's a lot of predictable issues that they have. I don't think it's anything that they can't overcome, especially in the context of the division, because the Eagles just look awful right now and the Giants are who they are. I think the Commanders could be a sneaky, interesting team, but at the same time, I think the Cowboys, they have their issues, but it's nothing that can't be overcome, especially given that they were able to escape New York without, yes, the 2 injuries to Lawrence and Parsons hurt, but they're not long-term season-ending injuries. That would have cast a much darker cloud than what is over them right now.
I'm intrigued by the Commanders, I am, but I agree in general it looks like the division is going to be mediocre at best. And to me, that's the biggest. If you're a Cowboys fan just kind of grasping for a positive here, it is, 1, the fact that the division is so bad, and 2, the reality of the Cowboys schedule. Those injuries to Micah Parsons and to Marcus Lawrence, yes, they're going to be out for a little while here. they may both not miss another division game because the Cowboys don't play against another division opponent until November 10th. Those 6 games in division are going to be what decides who wins the NFC East. How you perform in those 6 games, the Cowboys at least have some time until the second of those 6 games comes around against the Eagles on November 10th. So there's at least something to grasp at if you're a Cowboys fan.
That's an excellent point, Mike. When you look at the timing of the injury to DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, this occurred going into a mini bye week. So although it looks like the foot sprain on DeMarcus Lawrence is going to hold him out for several weeks, TBD on what that timeline looks like. Is it 4 to 6? It might be around that time frame, but he's definitely an IR candidate, which means he'd be out a minimum of 4 games. Micah Parsons has been listed by Stephen Jones as week to week. Both of those players sought second opinions, but, in speaking with Micah and then hearing what Stephen Jones had to say to 105.3 The Fan this week following that injury, it sounds like Micah Parsons has at least a shot at taking the field against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, even if he doesn't, the fact that he's not immediately ruled out of that game tells you there's a greater shot that he might be on the field against the Detroit Lions when they come to town. And that's going to be critical for the Cowboys because that'll be their next home game to try to stave off this losing streak that they have at AT&T Stadium.
Saad, how do you feel like these injuries are going to impact them, especially over the next couple of games here?
Well, I think it's going to be a huge impact because, you like Patrik said, you lost Sam Williams in training camp. You had an exodus of talent on the defensive line in free agency as well. I think, you're all of a sudden, Marshawn Nealand, I mean, you were trying to break in the rookie to make sure that, maybe in the second year he's able to hit his stride and stuff, but they're going to be looking at him. They're going to be looking at veteran guys like Carl Lawson and Linval Joseph and those kind of guys. I know Joseph more on the interior, but they're going to be looking at a lot of help to come from a lot of different areas, a lot of different players. There's no replacing Micah Parsons. I mean, this is a guy who was a top 3 talent in terms of Defensive Player of the Year voting in each of his 3 years in the NFL. DeMarcus Lawrence might be one of the most underrated players on this football team, especially against the run, which they weren't doing great against the run with Lawrence. So,
right. Yeah.
It's not great without him. So it's going to take everybody, but I think that a lot of it is going to fall on a lot of different players and also Zimmer to adjust to see how he can make the talent and get the best out of the talent that he has at hand.
What all of that really means is the Cowboys aren't going to have a pass rush, if we're really being honest, over the course of the next couple of games, and their run defense is going to struggle significantly, even more than we've seen it struggle so far this season, at least over the course of the next couple of weeks before they get to that bye week that they all of a sudden need so badly. Much more about the Dallas Cowboys' start to the season when we return on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Rangers won the final game of their season again. Just wasn't in the World Series this time. Their regular season comes to an end with an 8-0 win over the Angels. And Scotty Scheffler and Team USA win the President's Cup for the 10th straight time. Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Cowboys, next couple games here. We thought, looking over the last couple weeks, tough defenses, running games that they were going to head up to. So run defense is going to be critical, but the Steelers just lost a bit of a head scratcher to the Colts considering their up and down start. And the Lions have been anything but really impressive, I think. They've shown some holes over the course of this. So how should Cowboys fans, especially heading into the Steelers matchup, which I think is going to be the more winnable of the two, what do you think they should expect here?
I feel like for me to sit here and act like I know what to tell them to expect is a fool's errand with the way that we've seen this NFL season begin. Who knows, man? Who's good in this league right now? It's really hard to nail down who's actually a good football team. I mean, there are a couple of exceptions, teams that have really started well, but not many. A lot of it is teams that we thought were going to be good that, maybe, kind of, who knows? The Steelers looked like they were starting off really well. Then they lose, like you're saying, kind of a head-scratching game to Indianapolis. I agree. I agree that of the two, I look at it that Pittsburgh's the more winnable football game because I'm not sure that they're real, and I'm more inclined to believe that Detroit is real. But it's at this point, it's hard to say that we know much of anything about what's really happening with this season.
Saad, you're heading into Pittsburgh. What's your main thought?
Well, I think they looked extremely vulnerable today, and I think to Mike's point, I don't know what exactly to make of that. To piggyback off of that, the two undefeated teams in the NFC, their quarterbacks are Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. So, I mean, it's just everything that you thought was going to be the way that this NFL season goes it's not followed that script. And so it's hard to predict. But I will say that as vulnerable as the Steelers do look right now, playing in Pittsburgh is always tough. It's also something the Cowboys are not super used to. The last time Dak played in Pittsburgh was his rookie year in 2016.
Great
Obviously,
game.
he missed the 2020 matchup. Yes, the Ezekiel Elliott finish in that game. But Dak hasn't played there, and the Cowboys obviously only play there once every like 4 years or whatever it is, once every 8 years maybe. So,
8, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, for the Cowboys, that's going to be the challenge, more so the conditions of that game. But in terms of the team itself, it's hard to predict.
Yeah, when I see somebody tweeting, I forget who it was that I saw tweeted this, something along the lines of the Vikings defense is playing awesome and Sam Darnold is balling. And it's like, I'm sorry, what? Who? It just, this NFL season to this point does not make sense. No, see, what do you think about what these next 2 weeks could look like for Dallas before they get to the bye week?
Well, first of all, I think it's, as everybody predicted, Sam Darnold for NFL MVP, right? But when it comes to the Steelers matchup, for me, my eyes continually go to the Cowboys offensive line. Can this Cowboys offensive line, this revamped offensive line that includes 2 starting rookies and Cooper Beebe at center and Tyler Guyton over at left tackle, which version of this O-line are we going to see? Are we going to see the version that held up really nicely against one of the better defensive fronts in Dexter Lawrence and company against the New York Giants? Or is it going to be the one that was more or less a turnstile against the Baltimore Ravens and the New Orleans Saints and allowed a ton of pressure against Dak Prescott? And now you're going up against TJ Watt and company. That's no easy task, to say the least. So if you can buy Dak Prescott some time, and I'm talking Terrence Steele on the edge, I'm talking Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe acquitted himself much better in last game. No pressures allowed after allowing 3 pressures in the previous game. If that offensive line can hold up, I believe that the Steelers secondary, while it's not one of the easier ones to go against, I believe if you extend those coverage windows, CeeDee Lamb, who is now starting to catch some fire, Jake Ferguson is starting to get back into his groove after missing that game with that mild MCL sprain. Where does Brandon Cooks come into play in this game? None of those questions get answered if you cannot stop TJ Watt and that defensive front.
Your use of the word pressure makes me want to ask the 3 of you a question, because I feel like the answer to this question is yes, but I wonder where each of you sit. Is this the most pressure, big picture to produce that has ever been on the shoulders of Dak Prescott during his Dallas Cowboys career? The injuries to Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, the issues that have been had with this defense, big picture, the fact that they're probably going to have to go out and score 35. If the Cowboys are going to get to Philadelphia on November 10th around 500, we're going to have to look back over the prior month and say, okay, there were 2 or 3 times where Dak just straight up carried this football team to a win.
Interesting. Saad, you jump in first.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mike. I think it is, because for a couple reasons. I think, in the past, sometimes he's had a veteran center there to set the protections, do all that. He needs to kind of be bringing Cooper Beebe along right now. His left tackle, I think Tyler Guyton's been fine, but he needs to get some of those holdings penalties fixed up. I think Brandon Cooks is, to me, honestly, one of the biggest question marks right now on this team. I saw Michael Irvin chiming in on Twitter as well, just about Brandon Cooks needs to be better about pushing and taking the top off the defense, using his speed as an asset. You can't just have CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson as your options. And then now Dak also doesn't have a running game, and his coach is in the final year of his contract. So when you ask that question of, is this the most pressure Dak Prescott has faced, you're bringing around the center, you're having a new change on your blind side, your wide receiver has a question mark, your coach is in last year. I think absolutely it is.
I'm going to jump in here and say the easy answer, which is he's the highest paid quarterback in the league. So yes, absolutely, this is the most pressure just from the money alone. Patrik, your thoughts?
And that's exactly where I was going to go with it, Andrew. Look at his contract. And whether it be fair or unfair, as far as contextually breaking down the fact that it takes an entire team to win a Super Bowl, which is 100% true. That's the science of the matter. But when you talk about the court of public opinion doesn't care about science. It cares about the optics. And the optics are that Dak Prescott is the highest paid quarterback, which means he's the highest paid player in NFL history as recently as a few weeks ago. So that's still, his money is still very fresh in everyone's mind. So the public is not going to care about the defense struggling. We will, as analysts, we'll break that down and we'll say, well, Dak Prescott needs to be better here, but he was carrying the team here. The defense needs to be better. That's our job. That's what we're going to do. But again, court of public opinion, all they're going to do is look at his contract and keep pointing at that and saying it doesn't matter that Micah Parsons may not be on the field. It may not matter, or it shouldn't matter that DeMarcus Lawrence, one of the best edge setters against the run, is not on the field. All of that stuff matters. But again, and to Saad's point, when you throw in the fact that Mike McCarthy is in a prove-it year, essentially so much has to happen and go right in this year. And throughout the month of September, so much has gone wrong, but they're still at 2-2. So there's got to be some optimism there. It's a tough road ahead if you're without Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. Marshawn Kneeland, he was supposed to step up in the absence of Sam Williams. He can't be in three places at once. Yeah. He can't be there for Sam Williams and Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. So who then steps up? Chauncey Golston, expect him to pop out to the edge. But if you're thinking a guy like, this is not a knock to the guy, but there are levels to this. If you're thinking elevating a guy like Phil Hoskins from the practice squad is going to solve your problem, in the absence of Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence, you really got to think again. So maybe they dip their toe in free agency. There are guys out there. Shaq Lawson comes to mind. But yeah, I just think that they're going to have to get more firepower if they're going to be without those two guys for any amount of time.
Patrik Walker on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show dropping a science reference. The show is complete. I love it.
Mike McCarthy with an offense led by a quarterback with a ton of pressure on him and no defense to support him. Where have I seen this movie before? Anyway, that's our Cowboys.
The guy that wore number 9 is where you saw this.
Exactly. All right, stay with us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Coming out, the top 5 most devastating sports relocations. Stay with us.
And now it's time for the Top 5, sponsored by the Fort Worth Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for the top 5. And today, with the Oakland A's finishing their final game of the Coliseum earlier this week, we'll break down the top 5 most devastating franchise moves in North American sports history. So let's start it with number 5 here. The Quebec Nordiques. For those who do not know, since it's hockey, Quebec was the second smallest market in North American sports with a Big Four pro franchise. What makes this relocation tough? Immediately after the franchise moves to Colorado, the Avalanche win the Stanley Cup and become one of the best teams of the late 90s, early 2000s. Saad, we'll kick it off with you here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think just, you're talking taking hockey away from that Canadian city and that, in that province and everything. That's devastating. That's a country and it's a province that lives by that sport. So absolutely taking that away was a devastating thing for sure.
And also, again, just seeing the immediacy of the championship the next year, kind of
yes.
like Squidward looking out the window at SpongeBob playing in the distance. At number 4, let's move on here. The Supersonics leave Seattle for Oklahoma City. There isn't a championship in the Thunder's future, at least as long as Luke is still around, we think. But Seattle had a history. 1979 NBA championships, great atmosphere, iconic franchise, leaving a supportive community that most still believe deserve to have basketball in that city. Patrik, your thoughts here?
I am one who believes that Seattle deserves a basketball team, an NBA team. Just growing up, not that I was a Seattle Sonics fan, but I grew up watching guys like Gary Payton and Sean Kemp and Detlef Schrempf. If you don't know that name, go look that name up, okay? And I remember just how gutted not only the city of Seattle, but Washington as a state was to see their beloved Sonics move to Oklahoma City, and then, of course, the name change to the Thunder. And I think it's, no shade to the Thunder, but I think it's a little bit karmic that you've not gotten a championship yet. Give the Sonics back to Seattle.
Sounds good to me. All right, at number 3, we'll keep the color scheme this game, different sport. The A's abandon Oakland. We could go on and on about what the A's used to represent, the World Series, hell, even Moneyball, but the fact that they're the last of the 3 major teams out the door of that city, with the Warriors and Raiders leaving earlier this decade, leaving Oakland now with nothing except for a soccer team that's begging them to leave the seats in the stands, that's tough. Mike, what do you think?
I mean, there's something to be said for the fact that it keeps happening to that city. Like, you're clearly not doing enough to keep these teams there.
But the ownership group, at least in this case, felt a little bit more predatory than most.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No, the ownership group is a disaster.
They don't even have a plan in place. They have a schematic, I suppose, of a stadium in Vegas, but they're going to be playing games in Sacramento. They don't even necessarily have the relocation part figured out yet. They're just taking the team and running.
And again, that's my point. They're so desperate to leave Oakland, and look at the attendance that they've had. Now, the ownership group carries a lot of blame for that too, but there is something of a two-way street here, and the fans in Oakland didn't really seem to walk down the street very much.
Well, that sounds like victim blaming to me. All right, at number 2, this one's pretty difficult, but the Dodgers and Giants leaving New York for California back in the 50s. There's a reason we say New York football giants. Jackie Robinson never played in L.A. Baseball used to mean a lot more to America in general, so uprooting 2 proud New York franchises in a community that loved baseball just to move them all the way to California for the sake of expansion, that's tough. Saad, your thoughts here?
Yeah, that's really tough, but also the prestige of those organizations in particular. I mean, and New York is a sports state, sports city, whatever, however you want to call it. Moving those over, and then the success that they've had over there in California is also really tough for them.
All right, and rounding out the list at number 1, the poster child for terrible relocations, Jim Irsay stealing the Colts in the dead of night. Iconic Mayflower moving vans avoiding a legal battle with the city of Baltimore, literally stealing the equipment from the facilities. It's an awkward situation. Police escorts at the moment they reach the Indiana border. It was a mess. The franchise that had Johnny Unitas stolen away. Patrik, your thoughts here?
I agree. Just the de facto masterclass of how not to move an organization. Okay, it's the equivalent of you can't figure out how to break up with your girlfriend, so you sneak out in the dead of night with a stick and a satchel on the back of the stick, and you're creeping out like the Pink Panther. And it was just, it was an unmitigated disaster, and it will forever haunt both organizations.
The mixing of metaphors in there was so great.
Mike, I'll leave this to you to round this out. Who'd I miss?
The one that jumped to mind as you were reading your number 1 was the inverse with the Browns leaving to go to Baltimore.
True.
That one jumps to mind for sure. And obviously it's since come back around and the Browns exist again.
Right. But granted, not in the form that they used to be by any stretch.
No.
Like, very different.
No.
I think the
Titans going to, like, the Oilers going to the Titans.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss not to mention the Dallas Stars, because you take the Minnesota North Stars away from the state of hockey, and they come to Dallas and then win a Stanley Cup 6 years later. That's pretty heartbreaking for the state of hockey. I know they got the Wild, but I don't know. That's pretty heartbreaking for them.
Just look at any time the Stars and Wild play in the playoffs. Minnesota has not forgotten.
I also throw one more in there, and I don't think this is in the top 5, but it's just one of the, for me being a Braves fan, it's one of the funnier ones. Expos leaving Montreal for Washington.
I agree, but whaut that, we wouldn't have the Nationals, and I wouldn't have a team to root for in 2019. So
he's a Nationals guy, yeah.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart.
Whatever, man. We got a World Series out of it. That's the important thing. Before the Rangers, too. All right, that's it for the top 5. Stay with us. Mike's final take coming up next.
I got to say, I don't love Texas dropping from number 1 after their win yesterday against Mississippi State. I understand what Alabama did was impressive, beating Georgia, but it was on their home field. And they did kind of collapse in that football game. Yes, they came back and ultimately won, knocking off number 2 Georgia. Absolutely an impressive feat. If they had maintained the blowout and just annihilated Georgia all the way through, fine, cool, jump them up to 1. Texas is playing with their backup quarterback. Admittedly, a pretty darn good backup quarterback, but a backup quarterback just the same, and won by 22. I know Mississippi State's not any good, but I don't know, just it felt premature.
This is the first time I've felt like I understood the argument against the 12-team playoff, where it always felt like every game was do or die, especially for Georgia and Bama. They're sitting there talking, they're going to see each other again later on down the line, which either in the SEC championship, fine, but playoffs too.
But it didn't make that game any less fun, did it?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, so
no.
what's the
Especially
problem?
watching Georgia lose. You need to get that winning streak out the way. Come on.
I did enjoy the shot that they had of the Alabama fan just sobbing. And like 14 seconds later, they had the lead.
I know.
Can we rein it in just a smidge?
It's Bama. It's life there, man. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We will see you next week.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.